Welcome to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, a podcast where we explore the intersections of life, politics, cannabis, and influential figures driving change in the world. I'm Montel Williams, and today we have an incredible guest. He's a trailblazer, a statesman, former wrestler, an author, and now a cannabis entrepreneur. And yes, you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one and only. I'm so psyched about this interview, you just don't know. Jesse Ventura, my goodness, oh my goodness, you don't know. Known to many as Jesse the Body during his wrestling days, or the Reform Party candidate who shocked the country by becoming the governor of Minnesota, Jesse has spent decades challenging the status quo and advocating for meaningful reform. And lately, he's brought that same bold energy to something that you know I'm really passionate about, and that's the cannabis industry. Jesse Ventura, thank you so much for being a part of the show today, sir. You don't know how psyched I am.
Thank you, Montel. It's great. We were talking earlier. It's been a couple decades since we've talked.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Time goes by so fast. And my father warned me. My dad told me, he said, wait till you get older. It goes even faster.
You ain't kidding, man. But guess what? You still look good, brother.
Thank you. You too.
Absolutely.
We're hanging in there.
We're hanging in there, man. We got a lot of work to do. Just yep. I know you feel like multi-talented. I feel like multi-talented doesn't even do the best to describe who you are. You've been in the Navy, professional wrestler, a Hollywood star, a mayor, a governor, and now an advocate and entrepreneur for cannabis. I've got to ask you, you've worn so many hats. What were the common threads connecting your incredible career transitions?
Probably, Montel, the fact that I can't hold a job over 4 to 5 years. So after about 3, 4, 5 years, I have to go job hunting again. And that's why, in a way, politics work perfect, because you do 4-year terms. And so it's about at the end of 4, I start looking for other things to do. I don't know. I got wanderlust. It's just in me. It's in me. And for me, once I conquer something or feel that I have to a certain extent and been successful at it, I don't know why I start looking to do something else. I'm done with this. It's time to go on. I came out of 6 years in the Navy. I then wrestled and was involved with, and what's amazing to me, guess what? Hell has indeed frozen over. I am back in the WWE. My career has done the full circle now. I'm back in wrestling again. They're under new ownership. I'm really satisfied with being with them again. And it's really led me to feel very complete that because I can't go back in the Navy again, obviously, but I started wrestling shortly after the Navy. And so now my career has done the complete 360. I'm back with the legends. I'm back doing Saturday night's main event. They've brought it back after 40 years on NBC. And it's been an enjoyable thing, Montel. I can't tell you what it feels like to go back and relive your youth, because I had the opportunity to do that with them. I went back to Nassau Coliseum, where we did the first Saturday night main event 40 years ago. And I walked into that building to 18,000 people chanting, Jesse, Jesse. And it was like I had never left wrestling.
And dude, I know you must be kicking ass every Saturday night, huh?
Well, Montel, what it was truly a chance to go relive their youth. I walked back in that arena and it was like time had stood still. I was back, that 40 years hadn't gone by, and I couldn't believe the response from the crowd. I mean, I'm a villain, and they cheered me. I tried to do everything to get them to boo me, and they wouldn't.
Well, they love you, man. I mean, you are one of those timeless.
Well, and wrestling has changed today. You don't have the standard villain good guy today. Everyone's a character. It just depends if you're a popular character at the time or unpopular. That's how it kind of goes today.
Absolutely. But now at the same time that you're in the WWE, you were way ahead of your time when it came to the cannabis industry. You publicly supported cannabis legalization during your time as a governor in the early 2000s, well before mainstream, it became mainstream, you were one of those people that were out there very, very vocal. And I have to tell you that I applauded you back then because I was also out there trying my best back in early 2000, 2001,
Well,
trying to ensure that people had access to efficacious medication.
yep. No, I advocated and tried to do it when I was governor. And it was amazing because, of course, I was a third party candidate, a member of the Reform Party at the time. So I had no one elected. I couldn't even get a person to carry a bill for me. You got to have a legislator carry any bills for you. I couldn't even get him to do that on cannabis. But what happened in Minnesota was this. I lit a match. The match got lit. And after I left office, somebody kept that match burning. And pretty soon that match became a tiny little fire. And pretty soon that fire became a regular fire. And I'll never forget, I got the call a couple years ago now from Governor Walz. And Governor Walz said, Governor Ventura, I think you should be down in my office tomorrow at 11. And I said, what do I got to do that for? I don't want to go down there anymore. He said, no. He said, you're going to see the fruits of your labor come true because he said, tomorrow at 11 o'clock, I will lift the prohibition on cannabis in the state of Minnesota. He said, this was your idea. He said, therefore, I think you should be there when this happens. So the First Lady, my wife, and I went down. We're right on the right hand of Governor Walz when the governor signed the lifting of prohibition of cannabis in Minnesota, and then he turned around and handed the pen to me. And I couldn't have been more proud, Montel, because you do things in politics, and to be alive 20 years later and to see the fruits of your labor come out, something you thought to do 20 years ago, but government moves so slowly at a snail's pace that it took 20 years for it to happen. But when it finally did, it was very, very gratifying to sit there and watch something that I believed in come to life.
Let's take you back 20 years. Let's go back those 20 years. That's what I'm going to tell you. It's almost the same time that I came out. I literally was on my national television show. I literally, I had just gotten diagnosed with MS. And, I went about a year after that diagnosis, being prescribed, every opioid under the sun.
Yep.
And literally it was destroying my body.
Yep.
And so I had a doctor say to me back then, I'm not going to write you any more prescriptions for these opioids, but you ought to try this cannabis stuff. That's the way he said it. And he didn't say cannabis. He said, you got to try that marijuana stuff. And I don't know what it is. It's a special kind of marijuana. It's like CBD, BDBD, something. So I don't know what it is. You're a smart guy. Look it up. So I started doing the research. And back in 2001, I became very, very vocal in public. Back long before it was vogue, long before anybody, wanted to actually come out and step up in front of the camera and say, yes, I use marijuana. I use it for this reason.
Well,
what was driving you?
What drove me ultimately was my wife, because about 10 to 12 years ago, my wife started suffering seizures 2 to 3 times a week. And these were the debilitating seizures where she's down on the floor. I'm holding her head, keeping her breathing, make sure she doesn't swallow her tongue, all the stuff that goes with it 2 to 3 times a week. Naturally, we did what every family does. We went to the doctor. We go to the doctors. They put her on 4 different seizure medicines, one after the other, after the other, after the other. None of them worked. None of them. In desperation, at the time, I had friends in Colorado that I knew from my home in Mexico, neighbors. They lived in Telluride. We drove to Telluride because I had heard about the success that marijuana was having with children and stopping seizures. I drove my wife to Colorado. We illegally met our friends because at that time you had to be a resident of Colorado. They went in and illegally bought drops under the tongue, brought it out to my wife. She actually had a seizure the night before in the motel. Brought her the liquid, 3 drops under the tongue, and from then they started sending it to me, FedEx, illegally, so that I could get it in Minnesota. Eventually, Minnesota got it, and all that's another story. But for the time being, I was forced to break the law, receive cannabis from Colorado from my friends to keep my wife seizure free. But I'll tell you what sold me, Martel, the day she had after that last seizure, she took the first 3 drops under the tongue. She has not had a seizure since.
That's crazy.
None. Zero.
I mean,
Cannabis stopped the seizures, plain and simple. There is no doubt about it.
and we've known this. And you know what's so crazy about this, Jesse, is that even back then, and I don't know if you remember what year it was, but back then the federal government knew this. They had already given themselves a patent back in 2002. They wrote the patent application in 1999. They gave themselves a patent in 2002. That patent was 6630507, which states unequivocally that cannabis and cannabinoids have a profound effect on ischemic and on seizures. And they knew this then. We'd been studying this. They had been paying for the research under Dr. Meshulam in Israel and under, the doctors in the University of Mississippi. They had known this for years, but they never shared it.
Yep. And so my wife, she's been seizure free ever since. And that's what got me on board. I said, I don't want any Minnesota family to have to go through what my family went through with these seizures. I want it readily available in the state of Minnesota so that anyone that has health trouble that cannabis can help, they can easily get it and they don't have to feel like a criminal doing it. I was breaking the law for 5 years, 3 years? I didn't even keep count.
I was in the same boat, my friend, because let me tell you, when that doctor stopped me from getting my opioids, I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I literally had to fly to California because it really wasn't, other than some really, really bad growers on the East Coast. I flew to California, literally got up in the Bay Area. And while I was up in the Bay Area, I was asking all these growers, do you know something called CBD? And they were going, oh, yeah, man, you don't want that. I said, no, I do want that. Well, it doesn't do it. I said, no, it does. It's got medical implications. So I had some growers up there give me the CBD, the THC and CBD. But they were like, we don't know. People don't really want this. I said, well, I don't really need a big high. I just want to be able to medicate myself. And so I'm so thankful for people like you who decided that, they understand that this is an efficacious medication. And I know one of the things you've said is that almost everybody who gravitates to cannabis is gravitating to cannabis for a medical reason, whether they admit it or not. If they're gravitating towards cannabis because they want to relax better when they get home from work, that's medical. If they gravitate towards cannabis because they want to sleep better at night, that's medical. If they want to
absolutely,
if they want to reduce their anxiety, go ahead.
I think it's a mistake when they separate it into medical and recreational.
I agree.
Because as my friend Tommy Chong told me, the entire plant's medical.
Correct.
He said, those that are smoking it for the euphoric feeling, they're doing it for mental health.
Correct.
They're doing it for post-traumatic stress.
Correct.
They're doing it for whatever other reason. If it makes you feel better and you feel better about yourself and your life, well, that's good enough. Because it's a plant that and I always say this to the religious people. I go, if you believe in God, then didn't God make it?
Well, not only that, but here's another one you could add to it. Excuse me, didn't those 3 wise men show up and they gave them what? Incense, frankincense, and myrrh? Look up what frankincense is. Frankincense is a similar plant to the cannabis plant. Why? Because back then, we got to remember, people were living in the dirt, man. They weren't sleeping on beds. They literally were living in at times where when a baby was born, it was very colicky. So they were actually burning that kind of incense in their tents so that babies could, feel a little bit better. And so if it's good enough for the baby Jesus, God be good enough for me.
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you?
Wouldn't you? Yeah, but just again, let's take that little trip down memory lane. How crazy of a response did you get from people around you when they were saying, Governor, you can't do that?
Surprisingly none, because I was the independent governor. Nobody could tell me that I couldn't do nothing. They didn't expect anything else from me. I never used a prepared speech when I ran. I told people when I ran, I remember they thought I blew the whole election when I told them we needed to look at legalizing drugs and prostitution. Because I said it's ridiculous. What we're doing now isn't working. So when you do something and it doesn't work, then obviously you need to try something else in an attempt to make it work. And to me, oh, you should have seen the heat I took from prostitution.
I can imagine.
I said, well, the only thing illegal about it is they happen to charge money. I said, if they pay their taxes, would it be okay then? You know, but I said, I don't understand all this. You know, why you can't look at a problem and see that it's been a problem for decades and realize that what you're doing is not working. So maybe it's time to reassess the problem and look at solving it in a different manner. And that's what gave me being an independent governor. I didn't have to answer to a political party. I didn't have to answer to anyone but me. And it really gave me freedom. Freedom to say what I want, freedom to stand up for what I believed in. And I'll tell you what, I'll say this to you, and I say this not bragging. If I truly had political ambitions, I could have ran and won governor in Minnesota for an unprecedented 3 terms, which nobody's ever did. Instead, I only did 1. And if I would have did those 3 terms, you're looking at the president. I could have beat any one of these people.
I bet you, without any doubt, you could have. You know, your book, The Marijuana Manifesto, addresses a lot of the misconceptions surrounding cannabis and advocates for its benefits in transforming lives. Not only transforming lives as a consumer product, but transforming lives and transforming the world. Because, you know, we go back in time, we know that, you know, unfortunately, history has been written in a way to lie about the truth. The world was basically built on cannabis in some ways. I mean, every sail, every rope that was used for sailing vessels and vessels crossing the Atlantic were made.
To me, do you know what the final argument is on it?
What's that?
To me, this ends it all. Well, unfortunately, today it's a worthless document, maybe. I don't know. But our Constitution is written on marijuana, and Betsy Ross's flag, the original flag of the United States of America, is made out of marijuana.
Most people don't know that the entire Revolutionary Army was clothed in hemp cannabis. The entire Revolutionary Army. The only thing
when you see history like that, Montel, how do you sit back then and deny it? How do you say, wait a minute, this plant is wrong, when it's been part of our lives literally for this country since this country began?
And all over Europe and all over Africa, all over Central, Asia. I mean, if you really go back, most people don't even know that the entire Napoleonic War against Russia was fought because of hemp. People don't know that. People don't actually spend the time.
That's a new one to me.
Oh, my goodness.
I never knew that.
Look that up, my friend. It'll blow your mind.
Yeah, no, I had never heard that before.
Napoleon went to war because the Russians at that time were one of the biggest distributors of hemp products in the world. The Russians were trying to stop the Americas from bringing hemp products into Europe, and so in the European market. And so, Napoleon went to war to see if he could shut down, the Russians' ability to process. You read the whole thing, man. It'll blow your mind.
Wow. It's things like that you start learning when you talk to other educated people who are educated on the subject. And this should be class at college.
It certainly should be.
It should be a class at college today.
No ifs,
maybe
they should include in that.
Maybe even high school.
Absolutely.
Maybe even high school.
Absolutely. Most people don't know that. Watch this. Here's something I bet you might not have known. Do you know that at the turn of the century, from the 1600s to the 1700s, you could pay your taxes in America with hemp?
Yeah, I knew that.
Yep.
I read that somewhere.
And back then, almost every single person in the United States ate a hemp porridge, either breakfast, lunch, or dinner, at least 2 to 3 or 4 times a week. Why? Because they knew back then that hemp was one of the highest protein-laden seeds on the planet.
Well, and then you go through the history and you find out what William Randolph Hearst did.
Correct. Him and Charles DuPont by funding Anslinger, who at the,
Oh, yeah, all of them people.
Yep.
And you find out the racism they used.
Yep.
You find out that it was all done for the almighty buck because he wanted us to cut down his trees.
Yep.
Now, what type of person does that? It takes 30 years for a tree to grow 30 feet. Hemp can grow 18 feet in a summer.
Correct.
Absolutely. Hemp is renewable.
Correct.
Why would you sit back and want to cut down trees to make paper for your newspapers when you have hemp available to you that is a total resource that's renewable, way better than any tree could ever be?
And most people in this country don't know that people will remember the word. If you say Chernobyl, they'll remember, oh yeah, that's that nuclear power plant that went wild over in Russia. Well, why? Well, do you know that all over that area, they have been growing hemp because the hemp actually leaches those impurities out of the soil? If we were to farm in America by planting hemp alongside any of our produce growing plants, you could actually turn the soil over much faster and would have much more nutrients in it and less of the detrimental crap in the soil.
Montel, why does the government stand in the way?
It's all money. It's the same reason why, hopefully right now, I don't know. And I know we're not going to talk politics in this sense, but, recently there's been a guy that has been, nominated for Health and Human Services that people are throwing their hands up and down about. In some ways, maybe I don't agree with everything he believes, but I do believe that RFK believes very solidly in the fact that we should go back to these natural types of plants. But he's up against a pharmaceutical industry that, has been raping us. Do I think that they're so nefarious that they would rather keep us sick? We could have a long discussion about that. But there's a lot more money to be made off of sick people than there are off of healthy people.
That's true. And then the old cliche comes in, follow the money.
Correct. No ifs, ands, or buts, because right now we know that our government has understood and known about cannabis and its effects since as far back as 1970s. We literally funded some of the research of Raphael Mechoulam in Israel. We funded the research in Mississippi. And Mechoulam, who is given credit for identifying the endocannabinoid system, we know that within us as a mammal, we have a system in our body that's like a secondary, sympathetic nervous system that literally controls our cellular homeostasis. And that nervous system is called the endocannabinoid system. And so if we feed that
matches up.
What's that?
And it matches up.
Correct. If we feed that system, our cells would be much more homeostatic in a homeostatic position to help us ward off illness. But
by the way, Montel, can I shamelessly plug something right now?
Of course you can, my friend. Go right ahead.
We're coming out. Jesse Ventura Farms is coming out with what we call the Body Breakers line, which includes fast-acting terrapin-infused 2-ounce shots. And we're going to juice these up with protein to where you'll love this. We're working out. You'll get 35 grams of protein before you work out, and then you'll have another shot you take after the workout, which infuses you with another 35 grams of protein.
That's great, my friend. I've had products in the marketplace in Massachusetts. I have products in the marketplace right now in Georgia. And Georgia is probably one of the strangest states in the country to pass a cannabis law, because they're one of the only states that allow independent pharmacies to distribute cannabis along with dispensaries. So I have a product in the marketplace there. And I'll tell you something, I'd love to team up with you because we made a product. Now, let me explain the law in Georgia. They don't allow for vape, they don't allow for smoking, and they don't allow for edibles. And you go, well, how the hell do you consume it? Anything that's in a delivery system that is more pharmaceutical, we created this product that's like a lozenge. and really it's shaped like a little Hershey's Kiss. We use this Hershey's Kiss that has 10% CBD, 10% THC, a special terpene profile, all mixed together. And we're using not necessarily chocolate, but we're using it in a way that makes it easily dissolvable in the mouth. So it's one of the fastest acting edibles I think you probably ever have consumed. It's really unbelievable.
Well,
I really love this product.
anyway, for those that can't go through all that rigmarole in Georgia,
Right?
they can get my stuff right at retrobakery.net. You can order hemp-derived THC gummies and chocolates in any state,
Oh, that's
anywhere. Great. Just go to the internet, go to retrobakery.net or, Jesse Ventura Farms, whichever one you want to, because like I said, Montel, I don't want anyone in this country to have to go through what my wife and I went through. I want it readily available to people that they can use it. We got another big thing happening too. This year we're expanding our high potency cannabis products to the friendly states, and we're teaming up with Cannabis PhD Clement Dabney, and he goes under the name Dr. Dabs.
Gotcha.
And we'll be selling Ventura Farms. We'll be selling seeds from Dr. Dabs for anybody who wants to grow their own at home. And that's the safe way to do it if you truly want to do it.
Where can people go? Go ahead and give out some stats. Where can they go if they want to find out more information about that?
They can get it at retrobakery.net. You can get it at Jesse Ventura Farms. Just look it all up on the internet. It'll all come together. And like I said, you can order our chocolates and our cannabis products anywhere in the United States because they're all hemp driven.
And, now hemp requires you to do you got to grow a lot more hemp than you do if it's over the limit. So,
But it's a way to loop the system.
Gotcha.
When they put the limitations on the regular cannabis, they don't put those limitations on hemp. Yes, hemp requires a lot more, but you get the same results with a little bit more work. That's all.
Let me ask you, and thinking about that, it just don't put your crystal ball on, but just to think about that, my friend, where do you think the next couple of years is going to go? Because we're at this quagmire place. I'm in some people like you who understand what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing. But there are so many of these people in this hemp industry in other states that don't have the slightest idea what they're doing. Some of them are using some chemicals that really don't need to be used to push.
Yeah, well, like anything, Montel, we're going to go through a growing period. We're going to go through a lot of rigmarole, probably the same way as after they banned alcohol. If you lived back then, what do we do now? Alcohol's legal again. And going through the prohibition way back that my father went through with all that nonsense with alcohol.
Right.
So I think the main thing right now that we can do is education. Educating the people that don't believe these tales you've heard through the years that marijuana is some gateway drug to heroin. People need to understand, if you want to talk about a gateway drug, the true gateway drug to all drugs, it's tobacco.
Yep. And I'm sorry, I've been preaching the same thing you've been preaching for the last 10 years. Education is as important as location is to real estate. Education.
Yep.
But what do you think we got to do to snap this industry by the neck, snap them around and make them, make them understand that it's our responsibility to figure out within the confines of some of the laws that every state has to figure out ways to educate. Unfortunately,
I think the first thing we need to do is start electing people who will support cannabis.
Yep.
First and foremost, that would be a question out of where do you stand on cannabis? I would ask that right to any elected person running for any state, local, federal office. Get them on the record right now. Where do you stand on
And
cannabis?
most of these dumbasses will say, well, when there's more research done, and I like to say that more research is done, there's 3,500 peer-reviewed study documents published every year.
I went through that crap with the Republicans here. When we were trying to finally pass it in Minnesota, I went up to the lead Republicans. I says, what's the matter with you people? You're supposed to be the party of business. This is business waiting to happen, and the boat's leaving the harbor because you're sitting here dragging your feet. And he gave me the two lamest excuses, just what you said, Montel. First one was, oh, we need to do more studies. I looked at him and said, bullshit. I said, go to Israel. They've studied it through and through. There ain't no more studies that need to be done. It's been studied. And then he came up with the second one, the children. And I said, wait a minute.
He probably said that when he had a drink in his hand too, right?
Well, probably before he had his evening martini.
Right.
But I said to him, have you been to Colorado? He said, no. I said, well, why don't you go out there? And I said, walk into a distribution place in Colorado. You not only have to show your ID once, you have to show it twice. I said, so if children are getting marijuana, they're getting it because adults are providing it for them the same way they did with booze.
And we also know,
I said, because you can't go in and buy it.
But you also know that in all the states, every one of the states that have passed some sort of legal marijuana law, cannabis use among younger people goes down, not up. Because, in a lot of cases, a lot of kids don't want to be using their parents' Geritol.
Exactly. And and to me, well, I'll tell you who's in trouble right now, the beer industry.
Oh, no question. Alcohol is
they're hurt.
We know for a fact.
Because alcohol, the young people today are finding out you can drink these liquid cannabis drinks. Number one, you don't get a hangover. Number two, you don't get sick and go out back and throw up in the alley because you drank too much. And you can wake up the next day with no hangover and be able to do anything you feel like doing without a throbbing head. The kids aren't stupid. They're going, gee, I'd rather drink this stuff than drink beer. We were brought up on beer.
Yep.
My generation. Yep. It was score alcohol, get booze. Where do we find the old bum that'll run into the liquor store and buy us a bottle? We all went through that as teenagers.
Yep.
Well, you go through the same thing will happen with cannabis. Certainly, you're going to have adults not acting like adults and providing it, but that's going to happen no matter what. And when that happens, go after the adult. They're the ones at fault.
But at the same time, I mean, they have proven that cannabis use among children and among kids goes down if you pass the law and allow for it. And most cannabis consumers, I mean, I don't know too many people who are handing their 12-year-old a joint. You know what I mean? If they
I know no one that's ever done that. I don't know of one person in my life that has ever given a 12 or 13-year-old kid a joint.
Right. And what's insane is that, you had said earlier, we're going to have to start holding some of these politicians and these people, candidates, a little bit more accountable. We're going to have to hold them.
Absolutely. Ask them where they stand on it. And if they don't stand in support of cannabis, don't vote for them. Simple.
So, Jesse, my friend, what do you think, if you had to put on a crystal ball, what do you think it's going to look like over the next five years for cannabis?
I don't know. With this president we have right now is so unpredictable. You don't know what direction he's going to go in any way. I hope that he listens to RFK. I hope that he'll listen and lift the federal ban. If Trump wants to do something to affect all America, then lift the ban on cannabis federally. And, he talks about states' rights. Well, this fits perfect for him. He did it with abortion. Well, do the same thing with marijuana. Lift the federal ban and let each state decide for themselves whether they want it or not.
Absolutely. Do you think that might happen? Or you got your fingers crossed? What?
Well, with this guy, you don't know. Gotcha. It's whoever influences him on a particular day.
Gotcha. But like you said,
he may be solely against it today, and tomorrow he might sign it into law.
There you go. Well, Jesse, if people wanted to find out more about what you're doing, where would they go? Tell me all your stats.
Okay, I'm with Jesse Ventura Farms. We got new products coming out called Body Breakers, 2-ounce shots. Jesse Ventura Farms, we do gummies, we do chocolates. You can purchase them anywhere in the country. Why? Because we are hemp-based. And when you're hemp-based, you can take the orders. Everyone can go to the internet, go to retrobakery.net or go to Jesse Ventura Farms. It'll put you onto it. This year, we're expanding our high-potency cannabis products to the cannabis-friendly states. We'll be working with Cannabis PhD Clement Dabney, alias Dr. Dabs. We'll be selling seeds so people can get high-level cannabis and grow their own. That's the cheapest and best way you can do it if you got the green thumb. I don't have the green thumb, so I need to buy it grown already.
Gotcha. And if people want to know more about your wrestling, my friend, because you said it's every Saturday night?
Oh, yeah. No, it isn't every Saturday night. Wrestling, the next Saturday night main event, I believe will be in May. They're doing four. I'm signed for 4 of them. I did the first one in Nassau, the second one in San Antonio, the 25th, and the next one should be May. I don't even know where. And then the final one should be July. If they bring it back next year, you might see Jesse Ventura for 4 more of them next year. But I had the opportunity to relive my youth, Montel, and I can't tell you how wonderful it was.
And I know it must be really good because when you get finished, you probably take a little something to ease some of those aches and pains, right?
No, not right away. I got to drive home. I'm at my son's house right now.
Okay.
So I won't do anything until I get safely back to my home.
Gotcha.
I also want to tell people, too, remember, responsibility comes with cannabis. If we want cannabis legal and we all want the opportunity to be able to use it, then use your heads. Do the right things. Don't drive when you're under the influence of anything. Don't use machinery when you're under the influence of anything. You need a clear head for that stuff. Do it at the right time, the right place, and we'll all have a very happy life.
You ain't kidding, my friend. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of the show. And I can't thank you enough. I mean, people at home need to understand we've been trying to do this for a couple of weeks. Some things have come up and kind of messed us up, but we were able to pull this off. And I think that's because of your tenacity. Thank you so much. And anytime, you got a home here.
Hey, we'll do it again in a few months and we'll see where we're at.
All right, my brother, you stay well. And I'd love, if things change and the law changes, I'm going to bring you back so I can get your impressions, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, you take care of yourself. Love that family of yours. Tell your son I said thank you so much for helping to hook us up. Jesse Ventura!
Thank you. All right, Montel.
There you go, my friend. You keep tuning in.
Ring knocker.
There you go, brother. You keep tuning in to Let's Be Blunt with Montel.
I'll salute you.
I'll salute you too, sir.
Enlisted to the officer.
Thank you, sir. Be well. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments. Military Makeover is so grateful for the support of Purple Heart Homes, a nonprofit organization that rebuilds and transforms the homes for our veterans.
Our heroes come home with sacrifices most of us can't imagine. As a veteran myself, I've been there and founded Purple Heart Homes to help.
When I tell the story of Purple Heart Homes, it's the freedom to not have to depend on somebody else to do the simple everyday things in life.
Visit phhusa.org/makeover to learn how you can help.